So you're about 1 minute. But Xander, you can hear us fine, right?
Yeah, you guys are coming through just fine.
Okay.
And my mic is up all the way, so I don't think there's anything I can do to make it
No,
louder.
it's on our end, and
Great.
I'm missing a feed line, so I can't do anything about it.
Okay.
It is what it is. I've been trying to figure it out for the last half hour.
That could very well be, yeah.
Your chair? It is 7 o'clock.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, I guess I'm the only lady. It is 7 o'clock, and so I will call to order the October meeting of the Planning Advisory Committee for the Town of St. Andrews. Just as I record attendance, all members are present in the room. Just before we get into the agenda, I just wanted to make a formal recognition of the loss last week of our chairman, Chris Fleming. Chris was an inspirational leader dedicated to our county, our community, and certainly our committee. I'm grateful for his leadership as committee chair, and he will surely be missed. I'd ask if you would all please join me in a moment of silence in his honor. Thank you all very much. We will now move on to approval of the agenda. We all have the agenda in front of us. Looking for a motion, please. Thank you, Jeff. And Kevin. If there's no yes, Mr. Heem. Yes, you did. Thank you. If there is no discussion on the agenda, I will ask the question, and all in favor of approving the agenda as presented, signify by saying aye. Thank you very much. Any opposed? There being none, here is our agenda. I'm looking to see if anyone here has a declaration of conflict of interest on any of the matters before us tonight. Don't hear or see any. Next item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes from last month. We've had an opportunity to review, this says August 17th. We did not have a meeting in September. So if anyone's wondering, like I just was for a second, that is the reason. Does anyone have a motion on the minutes from August? Thank you. Seconder on the minutes. And if there's no discussion on the minutes, all those in favor of adopting those minutes from August 17th, please signify by saying aye. And seeing none opposed, those minutes are adopted. Thank you very much. Agenda items now before us. We have no presentations or delegations, but we do have a zoning application to review. This is council looking for the PAC's views on an amendment to an amendment of MP 20-0201 for Bridle Path International on 256 and 260 Water Street. Did you want to take us through the planning report, Mr. Gopin?
Yes, I will do that. Not a lot of change from the last one. And so, of course, this is an amendment to an amendment, as you said, Madam Chair. The change, the initial amendment was exempt the property from all aspects of the secondary municipal plan, and the current amendment is exempt the property from the height requirements with the implementation of a development scheme bylaw that would deal with other aspects of the project, which was actually a recommendation of PAC to have that development scheme. So it is 3 vacant lots, the former site of HMS Transportation, proposed 36 unit, 12.2 meter high mixed use development with 2 commercial units fronting onto Water Street. These are the current plans. And then there have been some changes through the plans. In the historic business district, the height is controlled by the secondary municipal plan, as is massing. Can't be varied, it requires amendments. Just zoom in on the properties, and they would need to be consolidated before development could occur there. And if a development scheme is put into place, that would deal with the land use aspects. So the fact that one property is mixed use and the other is central commercial would not, for assuming a development scheme is in place, which it needs to be for the height requirement to be lifted, the land use aspect of the zoning would be dealt with in the development scheme bylaw. This is pretty much what the property looks like today. Hasn't changed a lot since the HMS building was torn down. I don't know if this was the plan that was presented in the last presentation, the site plan. I did notice that it changed between July and September. So we did get a slightly updated site plan. And these are, they also updated the facade of the building based on conversations with neighbors, and I'll get to that a little bit more in a second. This is the water side. This would be the Princess Royal side. And as per PAC's recommendation, they did do some renderings in context. So again, looking towards the historic business district and looking away from it. These were provided by the applicant. These were the only views that were provided. So they do give some sense of what this would look like. Now, obviously, there are the municipal plan policies around the secondary municipal plan and around heritage. Those are, of course, being considered by council, but some other ones that are relevant, environment and climate change, the support of efficient and sustainable land uses and developments. This would be really one of the most walkable areas in town. It's, a block away from the grocery store, close to really everything on Water Street. So for that point of view, it's very, very convenient. No new servicing would be needed. The existing services have more than sufficient capacity. There are also economic policies that point to an economic climate being conducive to investment in the growth of year-round employment opportunities. So lack of rental housing does impact businesses and institutions in town. I think everybody's pretty aware of that. Now, these would likely be higher end apartments. So I think the developer would like to have employees of local businesses living there. I think there's questions as to whether the price point will actually match that. But rental housing is needed across all price points in town, even at the higher end, so that people can stay in St. Andrews and not have to move out if they want to downsize. Also, improve the business community by encouraging new commercial retail and service businesses. This would add 2 new, some commercial use. It could be retail, it could be office space in the central commercial area in the historic business district. So in terms of the uses, I think having a mixed use development there makes a ton of sense. It's in the historic business district where that is the general pattern of development. Having a vacant lot there is not a great aesthetic situation. And also it really doesn't provide any value to the town or the residents of town as it is. The secondary municipal plan focuses on context, and while no buildings are quite so tall, there are nearby buildings that are as tall or taller. with the setback, that does help mitigate some of the height. But there is a lot of concern among the public over design. If anybody watched the public hearing Monday night, there was a lot of input from the public, and despite all of the back and forth that the developer has had and the changes they have made, many members of the public, especially nearby residents, still feel like the project is too big for the lot. And again, you can see it there, sort of what the proposed height would look like. Some of the other taller buildings, the Kennedy Inn, and a few others around there. So would certainly be the tallest building on the block. The setback would mitigate that, but there is no question it would be the largest building. And it would have to meet massing requirements in the secondary plan. So there may still need to be some site plan revisions. But the developer really wanted to deal with the height aspect of it. And again, all of these things would, with the development scheme bylaw, there would be additional public presentations, additional public hearings. So I think this is still a long way off from hitting the ground. There's feasibility studies being done for an underground parking garage right now that would be essential to the project. And so I think until that happens and until there's more information, I don't know how much movement will happen on this file, but council has requested the views of PAC, and I think this is a very prominent site in town. It brings into question lots of urban design, and there is a lot of public interest in the file. So I think PAC's views are very important, and your judgment is very important. There are, specific bylaw questions, but I think at the end of the day, the ultimate question is what is proposed appropriate for this lot and for town. So I know sometimes discussion is limited to the very specific bylaw questions, but I think really, to be fair, those are the questions that council needs to answer. And so PAC is giving advice on that would be highly valued by council.
Thank you very much, Mr. Gopin. I guess that returns the file here to this table for discussion. I just want to, put on the table that we did litigate all of the various elements that go into this project last meeting, and we provided our views to council. It appears they took those views and rewrote the amendment to the municipal plan based on those requests. And so, although you're certainly welcome to provide some feedback on the project, I think at this point, it really is more about the text of the bylaw. Am I wrong on that?
I think it's really up to PAC how they want to give their views.
Yep, that's fine.
And I think there's, again, given the contentions of this project, I think PAC's views are very valuable. And yeah, I'll just leave it at that.
No, I do. I understand that there is certainly significant community interest in this, and so our opportunity to provide feedback and knowing that it is accepted at times is nice to see. So we can certainly get the discussion going. I would start with you, Mr. Heenan, if you have something to add.
Yes, Madam Chair. As you know, I sit in two precarious seats, the one on PAC and the one on council. My understanding of this whole procedure right at this point, it hinges on the 12.2 variance allowable, and it develops on if the underground parking becomes feasible. So those are the two walls that we're hitting right now. Nothing can go any further until those two sort of variances happen. So if he will not move forward unless the ground is feasible for underground parking, he cannot move forward, or nothing else can be done if we don't get the 12.2. And in relation, I go to my varied point that that 3 years ago, it took 3 years, they carved out Jeff Holmes's building at 14.2 feet. And that at 14.2 meters, and that was approved by council at the day.
Sorry,
And-
it's just come up before, and that was an error in my original report. I didn't say it in the presentation. I think the variance height initially approved was 12.5 meters, so it's still taller than this one.
Mr. Gopin,
Unless somebody has any other, yeah.
Mr. Gopin, from the PrAC minutes of February 2018, the height variance that was given was 13.25 meters.
All right, I apologize. So 13.25 had been approved. And all set to go was for shovel in the ground because we gave back the building permit, or the building permit money was asked to come back to the builder. And so it had been all approved. So that's all I'm saying. So there's just two issues right now because everything else, like the color of the siding and the facade and everything else, it's not really, not important. It's important, but not at this juncture.
Right.
Yeah, so that's all I wanted to say. Thank
Okay.
you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much, Mr. Enoch. Mr. Cross.
PAC, I'll remind you, please turn on your mics when you do speak. Make sure they go green when you are talking. Thank you.
Mr. Cross.
Yeah, I know the views that we gave the last time and I think those were pretty strong that we sent to council. I still, as far as the streetscape and stuff goes, I struggle a bit with the Princess Royal side of the building, but I mean, again, that's neither here nor there. At this point, I think some of the development or the bylaw, the scheme bylaw will take care of some of the issues that are going to come forward at a later time. So again, at this point, where it was approved before at 13.25, the 12.2, and it falls in line with where we're at. So yeah, I'm still digesting some of this. So I want to hear some of the other comments that are around the table as well.
I will give you a chance to revisit if you need to. Mr. Simmons.
So I had a nice long chat today with Paul earlier. I can talk about that, right? Yeah. And just tried to bring myself up to speed on the building size while I was looking at the buildings and we were going over to give ourselves an orientation and idea of the building. So the building is 90 feet wide in the front, 130 feet. And if we're looking at different buildings, to give us a really idea of what the building's going to look like, the Savesy is 85 feet wide, just so you know, on Water Street. So it's like grabbing a Savesy building and dropping it on a site, which we've already done with that because at one time that was a parking lot. And the Savesy used to sit back where their loading dock was. So
Wait.
it was a vacant lot at one time, a parking lot, right? So it gives us some sort of idea. And the depth of the Savesy is 160 feet. So it's way longer than this building because it's 135. And we looked at some other buildings as well. We looked at Serendip and Art and the Leather House together. We don't get the depth orientation, but we get the width orientation. The width's about the same. It's about 85 feet to 90 feet with those two buildings. And if you look at it to Church Lane, it's 100 feet. So it'll give you a depth orientation about the size of the buildings that will go back. Because really tried to look at and get it in my head that what are we looking at for building size and scope that we can see, right? Those are buildings we can physically look at and go, oh. So yeah, and I mean, when we talked about the scope of the size of the building and the height, we originally talked it's allowed to go to 12.5 if you circumvent A, B, and C in those bylaws. If they can't meet those requirements, we're already allowed 12.5.
Mhm.
So, I mean, we have to look at those. And one of the other things I talked about, Paul, and Paul thought it was a great idea, We just happened to be talking about Parks Canada today, and he had a chat with Parks Canada. Will it affect our heritage designation? They don't think so, but what they suggested, and Paul thought we should send it back to council and throw it in the scheme bylaws, that we have a heritage impact study done. And the heritage impact study through Parks Canada, they'll instigate the whole thing through the heritage, whatever. And that will have us look at what is the impact on our heritage downtown. They didn't feel it was any, but they said you can ask for a study to look at the impact downtown. And I think it's one of the things we should forward to council and ask them to look at
Love
and,
it.
and hardline it and take a look at it. And then the other one we talked about was drainage and storm sewer drainage, but that's all gonna be done, and a new storm sewer is gonna be put over to Queen Street. They're really working hard at that.
So just for clarification, Mr. Simmons,
Sorry.
it would have to be through the development process, they would have to do a stormwater management plan,
Yes.
which would then say what mechanisms would need
Yeah.
to be in place to ensure that they're not negatively impacting adjacent neighbors.
Yeah, and so and to reiterate sizes and heights, and when I was talking to Paul, because they don't consider Drew Haven on the same block, because it has to be on the same side,
Oh,
the same grid block. But to give us a distinction, 12.2 meters is the building that's being designed, 11.5 is to the top of Drew Haven, not the pergola, none of that, just to the peak. And the Burzins property, which is next door, is 10.4. So yes, you're talking 1.8 meters, which is 5 feet. But in the scope, I'd like to see it progress and move forward and let us look at it as it goes forward. But I think that the heritage impact study should be one of the things that we also suggest back to council as we move forward with this project and as we have more input as we go.
and you said that's through Parks Canada, that study?
Yeah, I think that's what,
That's
So
gonna make
for-
us
for-
sound So smart.
For clarification, they were suggesting that a third party do it so that it is completely unbiased and brought forward. So Parks Canada generally on any federal lands would have impact study done by a third party that would come back to them for review to see what mitigating measures or what is it that might be impacted. So it was suggested that, as an option for council, it could be, to issue a request for an impact study before anything else is done or included in the development scheme bylaw process.
yeah, and other than that, I mean, we talked quickly with Paul before we started tonight and we were looking at the frontal views of Water Street. We were just trying to get an idea of it's one of the things that me and Dwight were talking about on the first diagram. It didn't really give us an idea of what's between the north part or the part towards the dollar store. There's probably only gonna be about 25 feet of space there. Like Dwight said, it makes it look like it's all green space. We know it's not.
Mhm.
So the green space on that side will probably be equal to the green space on the other side, but there's 25 feet there. But remember, some of it will still be a parking lot for dollar store. He's right. It makes it look like it's a solid green space to the left and it's not.
And there are still apartments above. the
Yeah,
dollar
and I know
store.
there's still parking on that
Yeah,
side, but at
yeah.
least it lets it give us a scope of, we don't have
Of what the
straight on view with the
footprint,
next
yeah.
building in,
Mm,
but we know it's about 25 feet.
mhm,
So
mhm.
anyways, I like where it's going. I like the front of the building. I mean, sure, there could be a few other things done, but I think it's really starting to fit more within the scope of where we're at. And, yeah, that's all I really have to say.
Thank you very much. Mr. Ingles.
So yeah, I think I was the one that at the last meeting requested to have the streetscape view. My issue is that, as Kevin just mentioned, there's a couple of, on page 15 and 14, they're both perspectives. And it shows it in context, but it's a perspective. Whereas if you have an elevation, that's a streetscape elevation, it shows the existing buildings, whether it's the dollar store along Water Street or the residence on Princess Royal. And we have that context of the new built form with the existing built form. And then we can start really evaluating where and how it interacts with those two built forms. I'd like to see that. I'd like to see them basically zoom out and show that those built forms on both sides, on Princess Royal and on Water Street. So that really starts to inform how it's gonna look in relation to what the buildings are.
Mr. Ingles, for clarification, in a visual like that, would you like lines showing height variances between the building?
It would be nice to show, it would be good to show a line with the height, yeah. As far as,
Would
as
be a
far
good
as,
benchmark maybe for future projects too. I mean, if it's done once, then we always know and we'll not have to
Yeah.
have this discussion.
and in my mind, what was already agreed upon in 2018, I don't think that should really influence what we're discussing now. It's a new project, it's a new developer, it's a whole new slate of cards. So what was done before, I think it goes to bed and it's done.
Mhm.
This is a whole new kettle of fish that we're trying to do. The only thing I would say, and Xander, you can probably talk to this as well, is the elevation along Princess Royal. It really needs to start reading, especially that ground floor it needs to start reading separate from the surrounding public realm. There should be a separation between the two, and that can be done with a change in grade, but there shouldn't be that same elevation from the public realm to the private realm along that elevation. So that's something that they really should start looking at. I don't know whether that was brought up on Monday.
Can you say that again?
There should be a change in elevation from the sidewalk to the units along Princess Royal.
You have it
Oh,
straight,
yes.
walk
Oh, I see
straight
what you're
in.
saying.
Yeah, there should be some
Got
sort of
it. I
elevation.
understand now.
Along
Yes.
Water Street, you see traditionally there is that not much of a change in elevation, but I think along Princess Royal, we should really start to change that facade a bit. But once again, I think a lot of these tweaks will happen as it progresses along. And it is a mass of a building, and a lot of that massing can also be broken up with changing of that facade, even on Water Street, maybe making modulations a bit more and articulating that front. It looks like they're doing it a little bit. I'm not sure what the setbacks are on those inserts,
Hmm.
but that would be interesting to see as well.
Mm.
So I think changing the massing can be done, but we need to see a greater effort at it. That's all.
Thank you very much. All right. Yes, Mr. Cross, one more time.
Yeah, and like you said, I like the way they've done the front because, and as Kevin spoke about you got the leather house and serendipity art. But we still have to remember, and the way that's set back, it looks like it's three separate or three different buildings when you look kind of down across it, which I think you did a really good job at. I appreciate that. Again, it's my thing comes back to the side on Princess Royal side. I just have concern, but I like the idea of the elevation difference, which would offset that a little bit to be able to, the people or the residents in that area are looking right straight into that streetscape. It'd be a little different. Because I know you say Leatherhouse, Serendipity Art down below, but you don't have the residential side onto that. So we have to be very cognizant of that. Make sure we kind of nail this one down. So, anyway, I think the elevation and some sort of buffering there along the front would really help that situation. Anyway, there we go.
I, for one, am really happy with the new renderings that have come in. It does give greater context and it's not just a head-on view of it. So very helpful. Mr. Heenan, what were you going to say?
I just wanted to bring up 2 points that were brought up on Monday night. And one person who stood and spoke eloquently said, what will ever happen to that wasteland if we do not develop it? Because we also don't have people breaking down our doors to build, okay? Like there's nobody, they don't want anything from the town. They don't want anything, and like we have to really look at this and make sure that we're doing everything correctly. But we also have to remember that there's nobody else. Mr. Holmes' accountant was here on Monday evening, and he said that it wasn't feasible for them to build 18 units on that land. It would not pay for itself.
Yeah.
So that's the unit size. So that's what we have to just realize, that if we want that wasteland to sit there for 20 years, because there's nobody going, there's all kinds of knocking for up at, up at Mowat and all of that area, but there's no knocking for this lot downtown. And then people, in my viewpoint, like they say that, well, if we do allow the height restriction, or if we do support it, we're setting a precedent. Well, there's no other piece of land in the downtown plat that we would ever have to look at again, to my knowledge, because none of the old historic buildings are allowed to be touched. So really, if you take a walk downtown in the downtown plat, there's really nothing that can be built of this magnitude except on this corner lot. So that's just 2 points that were brought up on Monday evening that I just thought I would share with Pat.
Interesting.
Thank you.
Very much. Did anyone have anything further to add to the list? If not, I'll just quickly summarize what we've said, and then what I will do is just ask for a motion to accept those views, and then I will type up a letter and send it off. So, we've talked again about the heat, or the height rather, and the underground parking, that those are sort of being assessed currently. We agree that our views that we sent to council last meeting were quite strong, but we are going to add a couple to them. That being the streetscape on Princess Royal. It would be good to look at an elevation change between the sidewalk and the ground floor apartments as well. Do the same thing along Water Street, I believe is what you were, no, just Princess Royal? All right, thanks very much for that clarification. The height is in line with previous approvals. We discussed again about building sizes and scale. We would strongly suggest that council undertake to have a heritage impact study completed by a third party, i.e. Parks Canada, just to compare it to our heritage status to make sure that we're not compromising. Is that what I understood? Thank you. Thank you. And then again, I think the change of elevation we already addressed. I think as a committee, we're pleased with the direction and the progress this is taking. So we would indicate those views to council. Please.
When we were talking today, the town is going to undergo a traffic pattern study, or
So for clarification, that is one of the requests that has come forward from the public is a traffic pattern study that looks at pedestrians, traffic flow on Princess Royal Street. It can be a term and condition of a development scheme bylaw. It really comes down to council's decision on what they want to do. I will note that staff are already looking at the motor vehicle bylaw for other safety measures, whether it's additions of crosswalks, lowering speed limits in town. So as an example, we're already taking steps within that process. But if council wishes and has a desire to, as part of the process, they can request a traffic study.
Would you like to add that to our
I
letter?
think we should. I think we should just reiterate it with the town and just say, because I listened to Mike and I listened to some of the families on Monday night on Zoom.
Mhm.
And I mean, they were talking about the kids walking to school and the traffic that's been caused in that area just by changing the traffic flow, because more tractor trailers are now taking a left-hand turn on Princess Royal and not the Savesey because of the one-way flow. So, and now we're gonna add 36 apartments there. So I think it's something we definitely have to look at.
Sure, not all those 36 cars are going to move at one time.
No,
though,
I know
so,
that, but I
yeah.
mean, I think it's
It's
worth looking
it's-
at for sure.
It's definitely prudent. It's,
Yeah.
yeah.
It's absolutely vital to look at.
Yeah. Well, we don't know that. We can't make any assumptions about who's gonna live there. It's not really, yeah, we can't make those assumptions. All right, so if nobody has anything else, I'll look for a motion on these views. Any seconder on what I've just summarized? Thank you.
Madam Chair, was that Mr. Simmons or Mr. Cross?
That was Mr. Cross.
Thank
That's
you.
what I saw. I gave him the. All right, so if there's no further discussion, all those in favor of these views being sent to council, please signify by saying aye. And there's none opposed, so we will do just that. All right, moving along. Our next item is a variance request from the owners of 56 Rose Lane. Mr. Gopin, did you want to take
Yeah.
us through your planning report on this item?
I will do that. It is all me tonight. And we're moving from giving some recommendations on a very prominent location to making some decisions on a much less prominent location. So 56 Rose Lane is now owned by John or Bart McDonald. And there's a variance request in regarding an accessory dwelling unit, 2 different variances for that. And I'll speak to the specific variances in a minute. So this is a 3.5 acre lot with a significant slope down to the water. It's in the estate residential zone. There are 2 existing dwellings that are what I call the water side. The property does not actually abut the water. There's the old rail bed and another kind of 30-meter strip there. So those are both in between this and the water, but the existing dwellings are down near the water. One of those is an existing 1,200 square foot single unit dwelling. And that is what the developer or the applicant would like to do, is move that up the driveway, so closer to the road, and have that be an accessory dwelling unit. There's also what has been referred to as a cottage that's also down near the water. And the applicant wishes to demolish that and replace that with what would become their house, essentially, the main dwelling, the main building on the lot. So the actual request is to place a 1,200 square foot accessory dwelling unit in the front yard or between the house and the front lot line. The zoning bylaw does not allow accessory buildings in between the road and the main building, and those structures are limited to 904 square feet. So the 2 variances are to allow the accessory building in front of the main building and to allow it to be 1,200 square foot instead of 904 square feet. As with most variance requests, there's always some unusual context. And in this case, Rose Lane is part of that. It's a funny road that does not meet standards, even though it's a public road. So it can't be subdivided off of, as it does not meet the subdivision bylaw standards. Either the road would have to be brought up to standard, or something with a subdivision bylaw would have to change for that to happen. So initially, the applicant was thinking this would just be a simple subdivision, and I was informed that's not possible. The other thing is that Rose Lane dead ends at the subject property. It's the last house on the road, and after that, you get to the cemetery. So you can see everything here. This is the property in question. This is Rose Lane, and it stops right there. I guess there's a right of way that goes through the cemetery, and you can bike through there. Rose Lane is used. It's kind of a continuation of the Van Horn Trail. One of the ways you can go. But in terms of car traffic, you are probably lost if you're down there, unless you're going to dinner here, because it's, again, a dead end road. So slightly different angle. The water would be down here, and here you can see the 2 buildings on the lot. So this is the 1,200 square foot dwelling, and this is the smaller cottage that would be demolished. It was pretty rainy when I was taking pictures, but this is the view from the road. And you can kind of see that, like, you can't actually see very far before the property just drops down significantly. And this is a view looking back up to the road. It looks like they had already started clearing where they hope to put the new dwelling. And you can see that here. You can see these trees in between that and the road. This is all the way down at the bottom. This is the 1,200 square foot dwelling. And you can see a little bit of the cottage next to it. Again, that would be demolished. Site plan, so the new dwelling would go about halfway up, 50 meters from the road, and about 60 meters from the property line at the bottom. Looking at the municipal plan, there's not a whole lot to go on here, but thinking about buffering and screening of adjacent uses, streetscapes, and when you think about dead end properties or properties that are at the end of the road, they're minimally part of a streetscape, and they're really the chances of them being seen by the public. I think that's one of the reasons why we have these in the zoning bylaw, is that so you think of, people driving through town, you have a clearly dominant main building and then a subordinate accessory dwelling unit. We did do a 200-meter mail out, which encompassed 12 properties as per the PAC operating procedures. And I had one email about it, just sort of wanting a little bit more information. I told them, here's what's going on. They said, sounds fine. We don't have any concerns with that. So it's really, I think, completely outside the realm of possibility that that cemetery would ever be developed beyond what it is today. And the slope is pretty significant here. It will, as hopefully you could see from that road picture, significantly diminish visibility. Based on my calculations, that accessory dwelling unit would be 10.5 feet below the road. So you might see the top of it. And then the new main dwelling would be way down. You would never see two buildings from the road unless you were looking from above. And with the increase in the accessory dwelling unit size, the standards for accessory buildings in residential zones is that they cannot exceed 904 square feet. They also cannot exceed 10% of the lot area. In this case, this would be about 1% of the lot area. So it still doesn't meet the 904 square feet, but I think it is relevant that given such a large lot, it is a small percentage of it. So in staff's opinion, the important thing is that if the variance is approved, that any dwelling constructed in the future, so that main dwelling, it has to be out of sight from the road or any other public street. So while the applicant has said they intend to put it at the bottom, this condition would ensure that it does not, it really should never appear like there are two main buildings on this lot. And I think technically somebody driving by might think the top of that accessory dwelling unit is the main building, but from a streetscape point of view, not being able to see in the main building, I think it's just kind of a theoretical question more than practically what is the impact of this variance. I think the impact is very small. So you can approve the variance and accept staff recommendation, approve the variance with modified or additional conditions, or reject the variance, or multiple variances in this case. And I suppose you can treat each one differently, although I think in this case, if either variance is not approved, the applicant would probably just demolish the both buildings and build one new building down there, which would not require variance. Hopefully that was clear enough. It's a kind of odd situation, but hopefully that made sense, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Does anyone on the committee have questions for Mr. Gopin? Yes, Kevin?
Xander, you said it's 50 meters down the driveway? Is that where the location of the new building will be?
As for the site plan, yes.
So 150 feet from the road. Okay.
Yeah.
That was my only question.
Thank you very much. Anyone else? Mr. Heenan? Sure.
Paul, have we received any feedback from any property owners? Like I noticed the notices here that was sent out. Has anybody responded negatively or otherwise?
Through you, Chair, no, we've received no feedback. The only feedback we did get was the one question that was directed to Mr. Gopin and was answered in full and had no issues with it.
Thank you very much. Thank you. All right, is the applicant here tonight? Oh, thank you. Did you have something that you wanted to add? No. Oh. All right, does anyone have any questions for the applicant? No, thank you very much. All right. Anyone here from the polling area like to speak? Anyone online like to speak to the file at all?
None of the people currently online are from the polled area.
All right. Did you have anything you wanted to add, sir? Are you just observing?
I own the house for many years, great shape, the same as the mouth, that's why I'm here. Especially with the lack of house that we already have, it's not gonna do any harm moving it up there. I'm all around it, I'm all for it.
All right, thank you very much. Thank you. All right, well, that being said, then I guess it comes back to us. Is there a motion from the committee on, I think we're gonna deal with one variance at a time, just for completeness. So we're gonna start with the variance request for the placement of the building. We'll do the placement first, which is to bring it closer to the road than the main dwelling.
Yeah, I'll make a motion. As presented, that we allow for a 1,200 square foot accessory dwelling unit located 50 meters from the main road to be placed.
Is there a seconder on that? Thank you. Is there any discussion from the committee? Fairly clear. All right, there being no discussion, if we're ready for the question. All those in favor of allowing the placement of this accessory dwelling unit close to the road as presented, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And none opposed, that motion is carried. Thank you very much. Now I'm looking for a motion on the size of the dwelling unit. Variance from 904 to 1,200 square feet. Is there- Thank you very much. You continue to second that. Thank you very much. Any discussion on that motion? There being none, if we're ready for the question, all those in favor of allowing the variance to the square footage of this accessory dwelling unit, please signify by saying aye. And with none opposed, that variance is also approved. Thank you very much. All right, so our next file is regarding 481. Oh, thank you for coming. You can stay for the show. Thanks. Okay. All right, so our next file this evening is regarding 481 Mowat Drive. It is a variance application again to variance the placement of an accessory dwelling unit on the property. Did you want to take us through, Mr. Gopin?
I will do that. Not quite deja vu, but pretty similar. And it's very interesting as somebody who works to see more housing get developed. The accessory dwelling units are really a great tool, and I do recommend them to a lot of municipalities because there's something that people just can kind of do in their backyard. You don't have to be, you don't have to have any real development experience to do it. So it's interesting to see two applications come through at the same time. We've had a number that don't need variances as well. So anyways, we've got another variance request. This one is just on the placement of an accessory dwelling unit. The size is not an issue. This is at the corner of Cornelia and Mowat. It's a 0.3 acre corner lot. It's in the ER zone. It's a little funny because it actually does have services. It has water and sewer services, and the accessory dwelling unit would be able to hook up to those. It's an existing undersized lot. It would not be in the serviced residential zone, but ER zone it is. But because it's existing, it has development rights. So it can proceed with this variance. It has a 730 square foot single unit dwelling on the property currently, which is accessed from Mowat. The driveway comes off of Mowat and it kind of faces towards Mowat. And given the size of the lot lines, that's really actually what's important for the technical determination of what is the front yard and what is the flankage yard. So the front yard is between the house and Mowat. And the flankage yard is the yard between the house and Cornelia. The minimum flankage yard is 25 feet for the zone. But accessory dwelling units cannot be in any part of the flankage yard, even if it is outside of that minimum setback area. So that's what the variance request is for. This is the zoning. The slightly darker yellow is the ER, and you can see the SR is kind of just around it. But again, it does have services. This is an aerial view of the property. And you can see the driveway coming off of Mowat here. This is from Cornelia Street. So this is kind of a view of where the accessory dwelling unit would be located. You can see the back of the main dwelling. And here is the site plan. So the proposed accessory dwelling unit would be set back outside of that 25 feet, but it is very much in the flankage yard. Does meet all other setbacks and does not need a size variance. It could be larger than it is. And again, we're really looking at the same things here. It's buffering, it's streetscape. And we sent a 100-meter mail out, and I heard nothing. I don't know if Mr. Knopper heard anything, but I got nothing.
Through you, Chair, I did receive one email of just a similar question that was received by Mr. Gopin as to just what is it and what's going there. No further correspondence was provided back, so.
Thank you. Can we assume that any written correspondence in response to the polling would be included in our package? Thank you.
We did ask Town Works because there would be a new driveway and culvert being installed off of Cornelia to access this dwelling, and they did not have any concerns about that. Some things would have to be done at the owner's expense, but from safety and all that and the things they look at, they did not have any concerns. So again, very similar. The intent of the zoning bylaw is for accessory buildings to be less visually dominant than main buildings. And in this case, you really, given that the main building is as close to the side lot line as it is, it would be pretty much impossible to put the accessory dwelling unit not in the flankage yard and still meet setbacks. And while this is not a dead end like the last one, I think Mowat and Cornelia are very different streets in a number of ways. So Mowat is a high traffic collector. You're coming into town from St. John. You're going to be driving down there. I think the speed limit's 50 kilometers there, but people
Still
go a little
70.
bit faster.
Still 70.
70. Yeah, people are doing 90. Yeah. Cornelia is a very low traffic local road. You probably aren't on it unless you live there. There's better ways to get between the two sides. And just for some extra, to make sure this does meet the what is in the municipal plan, a little bit of extra screening, I think, would mitigate the visual impact from Cornelia. Again, just the accessory dwelling unit should not be visually dominant on the lot. And so, again, a little bit of screening on Cornelia, which again, people probably aren't driving down, should do that. And the view from Mowat, effectively from Mowat, the placement would be in the backyard. So it's still, you're going to see the main building first and then the accessory. So the condition that I'm recommending, if the variance is approved, is that a buffer of trees spaced no more than 3 meters apart be installed and maintained between the flankage lot line and the proposed development. Obviously, you're gonna have to drive through that, so access would be accepted. And I did not want that condition to have to go any further than that, because I think you would start getting into site triangle conditions. And again, I think as long as you're driving past on Cornelia and the accessory dwelling unit is screened, I think that that is sufficient. Because the view from Mowat would, again, it would appear as if it's in the backyard. So same deal as before, motion to approve and accept my recommendation, motion to approve with modified additional conditions, or motion to reject. And you only have one this time. It's just the building being in between the main building and the flankage lot line.
Mr. Gopin, can you go to a site plan and like draw or show me, point to where this buffering is that you're looking for? Is it parallel to Cornelia?
Yeah, I can definitely show you. It would be parallel to Cornelia.
Okay.
Let me just
Yeah, yeah.
share here.
Maybe
Yeah,
on
it's
the
Xander, stick with
aerial,
that
one.
hold on. Oh, yeah, that's perfect.
Yeah,
Where's-
so it'd be between here,
Oh,
anywhere between there. And there are some trees planted there already. They may even be 3 meters apart. Again, we'd have to make sure that it meets that condition at the time of development.
all right, wonderful. Thank you very much for that clarification. I appreciate that. All right, is the applicant? Oh, sorry, yes, questions for the planner?
Mr. Gopin, always one thing sticks out as a buzzword. You said the original lot is undersized. Did you
Yes.
say? Yes, so it's an undersized lot. But when I add the two together, like the house you said is 730 square feet.
Yeah,
So the addition, a dwelling will be 600. So really, we're just housing 1,330 square feet on that lot. I'm just trying to do the math, like with the undersized, lot just kind of threw me when you said that. So I was just
well,
kind of,
so I can explain that an undersized lot is there's a number of standards that lots have to meet to be developed.
right,
And we don't typically talk about maximum lot size, but that is one, or sorry, minimum lot size. Lots have to be a certain size in certain zones. And they need to have a certain amount of frontage and sometimes a certain amount of depth. So an undersized lot is one that doesn't meet those conditions, and existing ones are ones that, you know, maybe came in, were subdivided before the subdivision bylaw existed. In this case, ER is usually, it needs a separation distance between a well and a septic, but in this case, they're serviced. So I don't totally know the history here. But that's specifically what an undersized lot is. It does not meet the minimum lot requirements for that zone.
thank you, Mr. Gopin and Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. Does anyone else? Oh, yes, Mr. Cross?
The question for Mr. Knopper. Sorry. The road, Cornelia Street, is that now a town-owned street? I know there was some controversy years ago
Yeah,
about
years
ownership
ago.
and all that
No.
kind of stuff.
No,
So,
we've done water line repairs and some upkeep and maintenance and plowing, but it's still technically a private road.
so
It's
is there
not.
any issue with coming out onto that? I just don't want to,
From the town standpoint, we had no issues with the driveway access from that space,
And
so.
there's no HOA on that road that would
Yeah.
need to be consulted?
No, from our understanding, it's just a private road. It was left in someone's name. But over time, it's just the town has been doing work and maintenance, like you'll have seen, like there was construction work on it this year and it was. And it was new water lines and some repairs to the road, and that was just by the town, but it's technically not a town road.
Thank you.
thank you.
It's owned by the Business Development Corporation of Canada. So it's a federal agency. I have no idea what the history is. It's very strange, but it is effectively a public road since the town is maintaining it. And again, that's why Townworks didn't have any concern.
Okay, thanks. Anyone else, gents? Did you have some questions for Mr. Gopin before we move on? No? Thank you very much. So our applicant is,
Our applicant is online. I'm just gonna allow Mr. Busawan to speak. Mr. Bussawan, you have the floor to PAC if you would like to speak to them.
I have nothing to add really, like unless you guys have any questions for me.
Any questions for the applicant? No? Perfect.
Thank you, Mr. Bussawan.
Thanks
Thank
very
you.
much. So no one from the public, either within or outside of the polling area, nobody else wants to speak to this file?
No.
Thank you very much. All right, so I'm looking to the committee now for a motion on this variance.
I'll make a motion that we approve the 600 square foot dwelling unit to be placed in a flankage yard with just the one following condition that Sanders said, a buffer trees placed no more than 3 meters apart should be installed and maintained between the flankage lot line and the proposed development, with the exception of access.
Thank you very much. Is there a seconder on that motion? All right, Mr. Heenan, thank you very much. Is there any discussion? There being none, I'm going to ask the question. All those in favor of approving this variance with the staff's recommendations, please signify by saying aye. And I see none opposed, so that variance is approved. Thank you very much, everybody. All right, so moving on with the agenda. We have no terms and conditions applications, no signage applications. Is there any new business to address before we go? No new business?
Only new business I can think of is there's gonna be an appointment of the co-chair at some point. That's
That's a very good question. Are we waiting till January for that?
Through you, Madam Chair, we do have the option to bring forward a motion for chair and vice chair, but if you wish to wait till January when amalgamation occurs and a new PAC, like new members of PAC come aboard,
Mhm.
that's also an option you have as well. So until the decision you guys want to go with, you'll be acting chair at this point.
I am always here. I am a homebody.
There's only 2 more meetings of this year, so there
That's
will be
right.
one in November but we haven't received any files for December at this
Yeah,
point, so. Well, there technically we will have one and there is one file pending on that at this
All
point.
right, all right. And regardless, we'll certainly meet in January to do all of our annual business that would incorporate all of that. Pardon? Well, I'm counting on it, actually. 2, one from,
Yeah.
Shamcook and one from Bayside, yeah.
So for council to know, or for PAC to know, the full election, like a council election, there'll be 2 new council seats from Shamcook and 1 from Bayside. As for PAC, you are a group of 7, so you do have the option of bringing 1 from either side as well.
Advertise for members for PAC as well, so we should be getting some resumes as well.
Excellent.
We'll be putting that information out in November once and into December and looking for applicants who would wish to sit on PAC. And I will note, we actually had the last time when this was done, we had several members from Shamcook and Bayside that were interested at the
Oh, good,
time. So, but
good.
unfortunately they were outside the town
Sure,
limits.
yeah.
But I'm hoping they will reapply
Yep.
and they can go through the interview process and
Excellent.
see if they can be appointed by council.
Perfect. So maybe some new members in the new year. That's great. All right. Any other comments from members under section G? We have no closed items. And so that being said, it is 8:03 and I will declare this meeting closed.
Have a good night, everybody.
Thanks, Xander. Enjoy the island.